The rain fell in long, unbroken lines, thin threads of sorrow that stitched the courthouse steps to the gray heavens above. Every drop echoed somewhere deep in Clara Johnson's chest. Her coat, damp and worn, clung to her shoulders like a second skin that had endured too many storms. The world around her moved fast, businessmen under umbrellas, reporters looking for scandal, strangers who never once slowed to see the young woman shivering alone beside the pillars of justice. That morning wasn't just another day, it was the day everything she had worked for was on trial, her life, her name, her dignity. The courthouse doors loomed high before her, heavy and cold, polished with the touch of men who had never scrubbed their own floors or patched their own shoes. Before we go deeper, have you ever seen someone punished for doing the right thing? Comment where you're watching from, your city, your country, and let's talk about what true justice really looks like. Clara stepped inside, the echo of her heels against the marble betraying her nerves. She wasn't dressed like the others. Her dark skirt was ironed the night before using an old towel instead of a board. Her blouse still held the faint scent of detergent, the cheap kind that burned the nose but lasted long, like her hopes. It wasn't the first time she'd walked into that courthouse. 2 weeks before, she'd been here to plead for legal aid, only to be told her case didn't qualify. Today, she walked in without a lawyer, her trembling fingers clutching a folded piece of paper that simply read, "Not guilty." She remembered the day they accused her. The police had come to the billionaire's mansion, the house she had scrubbed spotless for 5 years, the same marble she had polished while the children laughed upstairs. They said she took the diamond cufflinks from his bedroom dresser. She didn't weep then, she'd been taught long ago that tears never cleaned wounds, they only made them sting. The courtroom smelled faintly of paper and rain-soaked wool. On the far side sat Mr. Alcott, the billionaire himself, his gold cufflinks flashing under the lights, the same ones she was accused of stealing. His gaze was sharp, but hollow, like a man whose wealth had emptied his soul. Around him sat lawyers, assistants, men and women whose shoes alone cost more than Clara earned in months. When their eyes met, for a brief second, Clara thought she saw hesitation, something warm flickering before it turned back to stone. He turned away. Her heart tightened. The 2 6-year-old boys who once clung to her skirts calling her Miss Clara were nowhere to be seen. Case number 1028, the state versus Clara Johnson, the judge announced. Clara stood. Her knees shook beneath her modest dress. The prosecutor's voice sliced the air. "Your Honor, this woman was trusted inside Mr. Alcott's private quarters. She had access. She had motive." Each word struck her like a slap. Access. Motive. She bit her lip until it almost bled. "Did you ever enter the master bedroom, Miss Johnson?" the judge asked. "Yes, sir, only to clean," she whispered. "And what happened the morning the cufflinks went missing?" She paused. The memory burned, the sound of laughter, 2 boys playing pirates, silver shining in their hands, then silence when she entered the room. She had smiled then, unaware how that small smile would cost her everything. Clara raised her chin. "I cleaned the mirrors, the tables, the windows. Nothing more." The prosecutor smirked. And yet, that very evening, the cufflinks were gone. The courtroom murmured. Clara's throat tightened, her voice a whisper barely audible. "I didn't do it." No one looked convinced, not the audience, not even the judge. Outside, thunder rumbled across the city. Inside, her faith began to falter. She closed her eyes for a moment, drifting back to a memory she tried to bury, a gentle morning light spilling through the nursery window. She was kneeling beside Adam and Aaron, brushing crumbs from their shirts while humming an old gospel song her mother taught her. "You is kind, you is strong," she had murmured, and Aaron, giggling, had said, "You sound like Grandma." They were her joy, her reason to smile through long shifts and aching bones. When their mother died months later, Clara became the only trace of warmth left in that grand house. But even that love had its limits, especially when money started whispering lies louder than truth. Back in the courtroom, the prosecutor laid out photographs and documents. These receipts show Miss Johnson recently wired funds to a relative overseas, over $4,000 in total. Clara's heart dropped. That money wasn't hers, it was a loan from her church collected for her sister's surgery. She opened her mouth, but the words caught between confusion and shame. She's lying, she wanted to cry. It wasn't stolen, it was saved. But the room felt miles deep. Her voice couldn't reach them. She noticed the billionaire's hand tremble slightly as he watched her. For a moment, a shadow passed through his face, regret, perhaps, but it vanished as quickly as it came. The judge rested his gavel. Court will reconvene after a short recess. Clara stepped outside, sitting alone on the courthouse steps again. The rain had stopped, the air smelled like wet earth and endings. Her mind replayed the last 5 years, the birthdays she baked cakes for, the scraped knees she bandaged when the twins fell, the nights she stayed long after hours because the boys cried for their mother. And now, she was the villain in their story. She looked toward the sky, whispering, "Lord, I've carried storms heavier than this. But please, just not in front of those boys." Her voice broke. A few reporters gathered at the base of the steps, cameras ready. "Miss Johnson, do you have anything to say about the theft?" Clara didn't answer. She simply stood, shoulders squared, dignity steady even while her spirit cracked beneath its own silence. Inside, Mr. Alcott sat alone in the witness lounge. His phone buzzed with messages he ignored. His reflection stared back from the mirror, a rich man dressed in guilt. He thought of his late wife, of her gentle voice insisting, "That woman is family," and of the days when laughter echoed through halls now filled only with clocks and echo. He had buried his heart with his wife. Now, he buried his decency under pride. A faint knock came at the door. His secretary peeked in. "Sir, the boy's nanny called. She says Adam's been asking why Miss Clara isn't coming back." His jaw tightened, eyes flickering with unease. "Tell her to keep them away from the courthouse," he said. But even he didn't sound convinced. As Clara walked back into the courtroom for the afternoon session, the light through the windows looked colder. The prosecutor was still smiling. Mr. Alcott was back at his seat, staring at the floor. The judge cleared his throat. "Before we continue," he said, "the defense, though self-represented, has been given one final chance to respond to the charges." Clara took a step forward, hands shaking. "I've worked 5 years for Mr. Alcott," she began, her voice hoarse but steady. "I raised his children when grief left his home empty. I never asked for thanks, only trust." Somewhere in the back row, an older woman dabbed her eyes. "I didn't take what wasn't mine. But I can't afford to prove that." She turned toward the judge. "What I have is worth more than diamonds, my name. And I won't let it be taken too." The room fell silent. For the first time, her truth felt like armor. "Before we see what happens next, do you believe justice truly protects the poor? Comment where you're watching from, let's hear your heart on this one." But as she finished speaking, the courtroom doors swung open with a loud creak. Every head turned. 2 small figures stood in the doorway, clutching something in their hands, the billionaire's twin sons. "Daddy," one of them called softly, "we found your shiny buttons in our toy box." The entire courtroom froze. Mr. Alcott's face went pale. Clara covered her mouth, tears flooding before she could stop them. The judge's gavel slipped from his hand and hit the floor with a hollow crack. Silence spread like wildfire. And then, the city itself seemed to stop breathing. The truth had walked into the room on the smallest of feet, and every lie began to tremble. The courtroom had gone silent after the twins' tiny voices cracked open the truth. Every person present seemed frozen between disbelief and shame. The journalists' cameras refused to click, almost as if filming that moment would have been blasphemy. The diamond cufflinks shimmered faintly in the little boy's trembling hands, still coated with the dust of forgotten toys. Mr. Alcott, the billionaire everyone once envied, felt something he hadn't recognized in years: fear. Not of the law, not of losing everything he owned, but of seeing his reflection in the eyes of his sons. Their innocence tore through him like fire through silk. His riches could silence many things: scandal, lawsuits, gossip, but not the voice of a child saying, "Daddy, it's true." And Clara Johnson stood there, a single tear tracing the corner of her face, unsure whether to breathe or faint. Her name, the name they had dragged through newspapers, whispered about in salons, and shamed in churches, was suddenly clean again. Before we continue this heartbreak, like and subscribe so you never miss what happens next. The judge's gavel struck once. "Order," he said, though his own voice shook. "Order in the court." Every heartbeat echoed like thunder. The prosecutor stammered something about verification, about procedure, but even he could hear the futility in his words. The cuffs lay visible, a pair of silver witnesses that didn't lie. Mr. Alcott rose slowly, his tailored suit creasing as though wealth itself had grown heavier. He took a step toward his sons. "Adam. Aaron, did you truly find these in your toy box?" Adam, the quieter one, nodded, eyes wide with guilt and confusion. "We wanted to play pirates," he whispered, "and we took the shiny things from your drawer. We forgot." Aaron sniffled. "We didn't mean to make Miss Clara cry." The words pierced every heart in that courtroom. Even the judge leaned back, hands folded, as if afraid to interrupt something sacred. Clara stared at the boys, tears blurring the edges of her vision. She wanted to rush to them, hold them, tell them it wasn't their fault. But her legs refused to move. 5 years of servitude had trained her to stay still when the rich faced ruin. Reporters outside were already firing messages to their editors: "Billionaire's sons exonerate Maid in court drama." But inside those walls, the scene unfolded too quietly for headlines. Mr. Alcott sank into his seat, face pale, lips trembling like a man stripped of armor. The shame was unbearable. In all his power, he had forgotten humanity. And in the hands of his own children, the truth had come crawling back like sunlight through ash. The judge finally spoke, voice gentle. "Case dismissed." A collective breath swept through the room. The gavel fell again, setting Clara free. Yet, somehow, freedom didn't feel like victory. As the people filed out whispering, Mr. Alcott stood, walking toward her slowly. "Miss Johnson," he began, voice haunted, I don't know what to say." Clara's lips trembled, but no words came. Apologies couldn't undo nights spent praying for mercy. She nodded politely, said softly, "Sir, sometimes silence says enough," and turned away. She expected relief. Instead, cold emptiness spread through her veins. She wasn't angry anymore, just tired, deeply tired. Outside the courthouse, the boys ran after her. "Miss Clara." They wrapped around her legs before she could turn. "We didn't mean to make you sad," Aaron muttered against her coat. "Daddy said bad things because he thought we lost it." Clara knelt, pressing their foreheads with the gentleness only love could command. "Sweethearts," she said, voice breaking, "you must listen to your daddy now. Grown-ups make mistakes, but children can remind them how to be kind again." She brushed Aaron's tears away. "Go on now before you catch a cold." The boys hugged tighter. "Will you come home?" Clara froze. "Home," she repeated carefully. "That house was never mine, babies. It belongs to your father." "But Mama wanted you there," Adam said. "You said Mama liked your singing." That name, Mama, made every muscle in her body ache. She remembered the night she sang lullabies beside their dying mother, whispering scripture between sobs when no one else would come. She had promised that woman to look after her boys, to love them as if they were her own. She had kept that promise, and still the world turned on her. If this moment breaks your heart, like and subscribe for the next powerful scene. She pulled gently away, walking down the courthouse steps. The crowd parted. Some reporters tried to speak, but the shame in their eyes silenced them. Even they knew they had written lies in bold letters. Across the street, cameras flashed as Mr. Alcott exited, flanked by his security. But for once, he wasn't posing, he wasn't smiling. He stood in the rain beside his black car, watching Clara fade into the gray distance like a shadow leaving a dream. "Sir," one reporter called, "how does it feel to be wrong?" He didn't answer. For the first time, he truly didn't know. That night, Alcott returned to a mansion that suddenly felt larger and lonelier than it ever had. Every light glared too brightly, every hallway stretched too long. The walls that once symbolized strength now echoed with the sound of everything he had lost. Trust, love, and the right to look his children in the eyes. He poured a drink, but the glass trembled so violently that the amber liquid spilled onto his tie. Sitting down in his late wife's old chair, he buried his face in his hands. Memories came rushing, his wife's laughter, her birthdays, and the night she had insisted that Clara wasn't just an employee but a blessing. He could still hear her voice. "She reminds me of who I was before all this money made me cold." He had brushed it off as sentimentality. Now the ghost of that sentence haunted the marble halls. Meanwhile, Clara walked home through the drizzle, her shoes soaked, her body trembling under exhaustion and disbelief. Her small apartment waited for her, a space barely bigger than the billion-dollar man's closet, yet filled with quiet dignity. She lit a single candle, removed her coat, and collapsed onto the small sofa. The sound of her clock ticking steadied her breathing. She looked at her reflection in the mirror, a woman stained by trial but not destroyed by it. Her faith whispered softly inside her, "Justice may come late, but it comes." Still, every time she blinked, she saw those boys. Their trembling apologies. Their tears. Part of her wanted to run back, hold them again, tell them she forgave everything. But pride and pain aren't easily untangled. Hours later, the same storm that had hovered over the courthouse reached the Alcott estate. Thunder grumbled above the tall oak trees as Mr. Alcott sat by the window, watching raindrops collide against the glass like ghosts knocking to be let in. He heard a soft creak behind him, small footsteps. Aaron stood there in his pajamas, clutching a stuffed bear. "Daddy, why did you make Miss Clara cry?" The question struck harder than any judge's sentence. Mr. Alcott turned slowly. "I didn't mean to, son." "But you did. Mama said if we hurt someone, we say sorry, with our heart, not our mouth." Those words shattered him. He lifted Aaron onto his lap. "Then I'll start there," he whispered. "With my heart." In that moment, he knew tomorrow he would find her. No matter how far she ran. Before you see what he does next, like and subscribe to stay with this story. The next morning, Clara left early to volunteer at her church kitchen. Even after her name was cleared, she didn't rest. She poured coffee, washed bowls, and served soup to the hungry, work that felt like breathing peace back into her chest. At one corner of the hall, old women whispered blessings over her name, calling her the maid who fought the mighty and stood with grace. But Clara didn't bask in their words. Her soul was still restless. Because forgiveness, she learned, was harder than being accused. She could forgive the world, but could she forgive him? That afternoon, the doors of the church swung open. The congregation turned, startled. There stood Mr. Alcott, without security, without arrogance, wearing only a raincoat and regret. Whispering rippled through the pews like a wind through leaves. He walked slowly down the aisle toward Clara, who stood near the altar holding a tray. She froze when their eyes met. He removed his hat, his voice trembling. "You once saved my sons' hearts when their mother died. And now, they've saved mine." He took a deep breath, his pride breaking with each syllable. "I can't undo what I've done, Clara. But I want to make it right." Every word spilled sincerity, yet every second deepened the ache. She stared at him, caught between disbelief and compassion. The church felt too silent. "You can't buy forgiveness," she whispered. "I'm not offering money," he said, voice thin with sorrow. "I'm offering truth. I don't deserve yours, but I'll earn it." For a long moment, neither moved. The rain outside softened, washing the stained glass windows in color. Aaron and Adam peeked from the doorway, hope painted on their faces. Clara's eyes darted between the twins and their father. The room was heavy with everything unsaid. Guilt, love, redemption. Finally, she set down the tray and turned slightly toward the altar. "Some wounds don't ask for gold to heal, Mr. Alcott. They ask for change." She didn't need to say more. Her voice carried enough grace to quiet a lifetime of arrogance. He nodded slowly, tears glistening like penance. The chapter closed just as the church bells rang noon, each toll echoing the fragile truth that money could imprison, but humility could still set a soul free. And for the first time since that courtroom rain, both hearts, rich and poor, began to thaw. The morning after the courtroom storm, Clara woke before sunrise. The faint hum of traffic outside her window blended with the steady rhythm of her heart, a heart both freed and fractured. She watched the orange light crawl across the walls of her small apartment, touching the photographs taped beside her bed, her mother, long gone, her church group, and the smiling twins who had saved her name in front of the world. But freedom was strange. It didn't bring peace. It only brought questions that hurt. Why had Mr. Alcott stayed silent until his son spoke? Why had he watched her break instead of speaking truth while it still mattered? The world had applauded her innocence, but no one saw the hole it left inside her. Forgiveness was easy for people who hadn't been caged by lies. Like and subscribe before the next storm unfolds in Clara's life. At church, everyone celebrated her vindication, hugs, tears, hallelujahs, and promises that God restored justice. She smiled for their sake but inside felt hollow. Pastor Ruth placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Child, the hardest freedom is the one that comes after disgrace. Don't let bitterness borrow your soul." Clara nodded, forcing a smile. But she couldn't tell her pastor what still haunted her, the memory of Mr. Alcott's voice, cold and trembling, accusing her while knowing deep down she was innocent. His silence that day had been louder than any shout. After service, she cleaned the church hall alone. Every sweep of the broom reminded her of the mansion she was banished from. She could almost hear the boys' laughter echoing in her ears. Every sound of joy cut her heart open again. By evening, she returned home exhausted. But something unexpected awaited. An envelope slipped under her door. Her name, written in elegant black ink. Her hands trembled as she opened it. Inside was a letter. "Miss Johnson," it began, "I do not ask for forgiveness, for I have not earned the right to ask. But I owe you truth. Please meet me tomorrow at the cemetery beside my late wife's grave." She would want me to explain. It was signed, Michael Alcott. She sat in silence, staring at the letter until night fell. Her instinct screamed no, but her heart whispered yes. Maybe she needed to hear the words that should have been spoken in court. The next afternoon, the sky darkened early. Clouds twisted above like smoke, the kind that carried old grief. Clara arrived at the gated cemetery just before 5. Marble angels lined the path like watchful guards. At the far end stood Mr. Alcott. He looked smaller, almost frail, without his tailored confidence. "I wasn't sure you'd come," he said softly. "I almost didn't," she replied, voice steady but cautious. He nodded, folding and unfolding his hat with nervous hands. "My wife loved you," he started. "After she passed, I lost myself in numbers, in walls of money and transactions. You were still there, caring for my sons, keeping the home alive. And still, I accused you. You remained silent while I drowned," she said, her tone whispering more pain than anger. He swallowed hard. I thought I'd lose face. I didn't realize I was losing my soul. Clara looked up toward the gray sky. Justice came through your children, not you. That should tell you something. A gust of wind passed, scattering leaves between them. Somewhere behind, a caretaker's shovel hit stone. Mr. Alcott took a shaky breath. I've stepped down from my board. I've begun selling the yacht, the villa. I want to build a foundation in your name, for women who cannot afford lawyers, so no one stands alone like you did. She stared at him, heart caught between anger and awe. Money cannot mend conscience, she said. I know, he whispered. But maybe it can serve repentance. Like and subscribe for the moment redemption meets resistance. They stood in silence. The cemetery's quiet pressed heavy on their chests. Nearby, the twins placed flowers on their mother's tomb. The simplicity of that act broke something inside both adults. Clara turned to leave, but Michael's voice stopped her. Clara, please. Let them see you, if not for me. She hesitated. The boys noticed her, two small figures who had once been her world. They ran forward, locking arms around her waist. Their giggles were the same as before, pure and unfiltered. Miss Clara, Daddy's doing school runs now. Aaron shouted proudly. He makes pancakes, but they're weird. She laughed, a sound she hadn't realized she still had in her. Adam looked up at her with a solemn frown. Are you still mad at Daddy? Clara knelt, brushing a curl from his forehead. Madness fades faster than guilt, sweetheart. But hurt takes time to heal. Adam nodded as if he understood everything in the world. Then we'll wait till you're not hurt anymore. Right, Daddy? Michael's eyes glistened. Right, he whispered. For the first time, the four of them stood together like a broken family trying to remember how to be whole. That night, Clara wrote in her journal, the one she had stopped using since the trial began. Today I saw sorrow kneel before humility. The mighty looked small. The innocent felt heavy. Maybe forgiveness isn't forgetting, it's deciding to look at pain and not let it own you. She closed the book and prayed. But as she drifted to sleep, distant thunder growled. Her peace was short-lived. The next morning brought news. Reporters at the courthouse were still chasing the story, except now, the headlines had changed. Former billionaire retreats from fortune amid scandal. Others claimed that Alcott's company faced internal revolt, investors fleeing after his public apology. Her phone buzzed incessantly. Some praised her. Others accused her of destroying a business. Justice had its own price. Days passed. Clara avoided the spotlight, but cameras followed her nonetheless. She tried walking different routes to work, wearing hats, sunglasses, even scarves. But every headline made her feel like a spectacle instead of a survivor. At dusk one evening, a soft knock came at her door again. She froze, heart racing. It wasn't the press. It was Michael. He looked pale, exhausted, shadows sinking deep beneath his eyes. He carried an envelope thicker than the first. This is for you, he said. Please take it. I told you money doesn't clean sin, she said sternly. It isn't just money. It's the ownership documents for my beach house. For you and the boys' trust. It's my apology turned into something lasting. She stared between his trembling hands and his eyes. They no longer belonged to a titan of industry, they were the eyes of a father trying to rebuild what greed had broken. Why me? She whispered. Because you taught me what it means to be poor and still rich. She stepped back, voice trembling. Do you really think buying peace will give you rest? He smiled faintly. No. But maybe it will give you safety. That night, unable to sleep, she went walking along the beach outside the old estate. Moonlight glistened on waves that stretched forever. She had once cleaned those halls behind her, invisible as the air. Now, she was being offered the keys to them. But her heart turned toward something simpler, the church kitchen, the children she fed, the life that wasn't gilded but honest. She knelt by the shoreline, sand cold against her knees. "Lord," she whispered, "teach me to forgive without forgetting the lesson." Behind her, another pair of footsteps approached, the small, rhythmic ones of Adam and Aaron, running toward her under the watchful gaze of their father. "Miss Clara," they shouted together. "Daddy said you can sing again." She turned, smiling faintly through tears. "Then you'd better sing with me." As their voices mingled with the wind, Michael stood back, watching, hands deep in his pockets, face half-lit by moonlight. For the first time, he didn't see himself as the man who owned the world, but as one learning how to live in it. Like and subscribe to see Clara's next step toward forgiveness. Hours later, as the waves began to calm, Clara and the boys walked hand in hand toward the house. She hesitated at the threshold, the same doorway where betrayal was once born. Inside, light spilled from the grand hallway. Michael stood beneath a portrait of his late wife, eyes lifted in silent prayer. When Clara moved closer, she saw another framed picture beside it, a candid shot she didn't know existed, her and the twins laughing in the garden years ago. Beneath it, a small plaque read, "For the woman who kept love alive." A tear slipped down her cheek. It wasn't the gift that broke her, it was the acknowledgement. She turned to Michael, voice trembling. "You can stop trying to fix the past. Just don't repeat it." "I won't," he said quietly. He extended his hand, but she didn't take it. Instead, she placed her own over his and gently lowered it. "Let grace do the rest," she whispered, walking past him into the lighted hall. And for the first time since all of it began, both of them stood in the same house. But not as master and maid, not as accuser and accused, but as two flawed souls waiting for time to teach them what forgiveness means. Just then, thunder returned, and power flickered. The lights dimmed. Michael looked toward the boys nervously, only to realize Aaron wasn't beside him anymore. "Where's Aaron?" he called, panic filling his voice. The storm outside roared back like an omen. Clara froze, instinct surged through her. The last thing she heard was a child's voice, faint and distant, "Miss Clara," echoing from beyond the darkened hallway. The light went out. A cry in the dark. A test of love reborn under a storm neither of them saw coming. Rain returned that night, soft at first, then cruel, hammering against the mansion windows like regret come home to collect its dues. Clara stood motionless near the grand staircase, clutching a candle that flickered its light across her trembling face. The storm outside had swallowed Aaron's cries, and the hall echoed with thunder instead of laughter. Somewhere in the shadows, lightning revealed the portrait of Mrs. Alcott watching down, serene, distant, eternal. His voice came from this way. Michael shouted, his footsteps pounding across the marble floor. Clara's heart hammered as fear clawed through her chest. Every second mattered now. Then, another scream. "Hi, frightened. Aaron. Like and subscribe before this storm takes a darker turn." They raced toward the west wing, the oldest part of the mansion, where dust had stories and doors groaned like tired souls. The power outage had swallowed everything in blackness. Clara's candle barely cut through it, throwing trembling halos of light across the cracked wallpaper. "Aaron," she shouted. "Where are you, sweetheart?" From somewhere deep ahead came a faint sob. "Miss Clara." She ran, skirts brushing against cold stone, Michael close behind. When they reached the corridor's end, they found a small door ajar, the storage room where the late Mrs. Alcott's belongings were kept. Inside, amidst half-covered furniture, Aaron sat curled on the floor, clutching something close. "Oh, baby," Clara knelt, wrapping her arms around him. "You scared us." His tiny hands shook as he handed her an envelope, wrinkled and stained with tears. "I wanted to see Mama's things," he said between hiccups. This fell from her box. The room went silent. Michael stared at the letter for a long moment before whispering, that's her handwriting. Clara looked at it, delicate cursive, faded blue ink that still carried grace even through dust. On the front, in careful curves, it read only one word, for Michael. To be opened when truth hurts. The lightning flashed, and both adults felt the same chill. In the study, with candles lit and Aaron asleep beside the fire, Michael untied the old ribbon and unfolded the letter. His hands trembled not from cold, but from the weight of what love had kept buried. My beloved Michael, it began. I've watched the way your empire grows, but I fear the cost you cannot see. I see our sons learning silence before kindness, and I see how hardened your eyes have become each day you call power peace. Should the time ever come when truth and shame meet you face to face, remember the soul that keeps our home alive is not ours, it's hers. Clara will remind you of the man you once were. Protect her when I no longer can. The paper trembled as Michael's tears dotted the words. He pressed the page to his chest but couldn't speak. Clara stood by the window, watching the rain carve silver rivers across the glass. She trusted me with them, Clara whispered. And you punished me for it. Michael looked at her, voice breaking. I deserve every word she wrote. I lived blind, chasing numbers, losing hearts. The candles flickered, smoke curling between them like the past refusing to die. But this, he said, lifting the letter, it means you were her last hope, not me. Clara turned away. Her hope deserved better than the lies you built. I know, he said softly. And that's why I'm asking you not for forgiveness, but for a second chance to make the truth visible. By morning, the storm passed, but the house carried the scent of damp grief. The boys clung to each other as Clara helped prepare breakfast, the first real warmth the home had held in years. Michael joined quietly, sleeves rolled, humility in every small gesture. He poured milk into cups, his once commanding form now careful, deliberate. You shouldn't have to do this, Clara said without looking at him. Maybe I should have done it long ago, he replied. For a time, silence became their truce, fragile yet sacred. After breakfast, the twins played quietly with their toys beside the fireplace. Clara stepped into the garden to breathe the fresh air. Raindrops clung to the rose bushes she had planted years before, blooming in defiance of neglect. Michael followed her out, hands in his pockets. The letter changes everything, he said quietly. I've decided to sell the properties abroad and dedicate everything under her foundation's name. I'd like you to oversee it, with my sons. She turned sharply. You want me to work for you again? No, he said. I want to work with you. The words hung between them, fragile, dangerous, almost healing. Like and subscribe to keep following this fragile road toward redemption. The following week brought attention they hadn't asked for. Word spread through the media that Clara and Michael were seen together again, headlines twisting facts into rumor, mercy into scandal. Outside the gate gathered reporters, flashbulbs piercing peace. Inside, the staff whispered behind doors. It seemed the world couldn't let silence heal. But Clara stayed, not for him, but for the children who still woke from nightmares calling her name. Michael, once a man untouched by gossip, now shielded her from questions he once would have ignored. Let them talk, he said one evening as they stood near the piano. They only see the noise. They don't see what truth costs. Clara looked at him, her voice low. And what does truth cost, Michael? He hesitated. Everything I once thought mattered. Then she placed something small on the piano, the folded letter from his wife. Truth also gives what pride never can. For the first time, his eyes softened. Later that night, in the quiet of the nursery, Clara found the boys asleep, arms entangled, breaths gentle, innocence restored. She knelt beside them, brushing her fingers through their hair. You're your mother's mercy, she whispered. Never forget that. In the doorway, Michael watched, his shadow merging with the moonlight. The sight pierced him deeper than guilt ever could. He had built towers, negotiated empires, controlled everything but love, and here it lived, small, steady, and free, in the woman he had once condemned. When she rose to leave, their eyes met. No apology could complete what silence had already said. Days blended into weeks, and slowly, the mansion changed. Curtains were drawn open, halls swept, laughter returned like forgotten hymns. Reporters lost interest. But beneath the light, both Clara and Michael carried the same invisible question: where would redemption lead them now? One evening, while reviewing documents for the foundation, Clara found another envelope tucked between pages of Mrs. Alcott's archived letters. It wasn't addressed. Inside was a single line, written by the late woman's hand. If ever the night feels too heavy, go to the old willow by the lake. You'll find what I left in trust. The message stirred something deep in Clara, curiosity laced with dread. At midnight, guided by a small lantern, she followed the path leading to the lake behind the estate. The willow loomed tall, branches dipping into the water. Beneath its roots, half buried in soil, lay a small wooden box. She lifted it gently, brushed off the dirt, and opened it. Inside was a locket, gold, heart-shaped, engraved with initials and a hidden latch. Inside the locket were two tiny photos, one of Mrs. Alcott holding her infant sons, the other of Clara, smiling faintly, caught unaware. Beneath it lay another folded paper. To the one who kept my family breathing, if my husband forgets compassion, remind him with grace, not vengeance. The words blurred as tears filled Clara's eyes. She had promised to keep those boys safe, and now, years later, she realized Mrs. Alcott had known everything that was to come. Like and subscribe to witness what destiny reveals next night by the lake. Behind her, footsteps cracked twigs, slow, hesitant. She turned to see Michael approaching, lantern in hand, soaked by fog. "I thought I'd find you here," he said softly. "How did you know?" "She told me once," he replied, kneeling beside her. This was her place of peace. Clara showed him the locket. "She left this for you too. It's both blessing and burden." He reached out but didn't take it. "You keep it. You were her light when she had none left." Silence settled again, filled only by water rippling against the shore. The moonlight revealed tears glistening on both their faces. "This place," Clara murmured, "it feels like goodbye." "Maybe not," he said. "Maybe it's where goodbye becomes enough to start again." She looked at him, unsure whether to believe words born from so much loss. Behind them, wind moved gently through the willow leaves, whispering the way the dead sometimes do when love is almost forgiven. As they turned to leave, lightning split the horizon once more. It wasn't the crash that startled them, it was the reflection caught in the water, a shadow standing beyond the tree line. A figure watching. Michael stepped forward, shielding Clara instinctively. "Who's there?" he called. No answer. Only the echo of footsteps retreating into the woods. Clara clutched the locket close to her heart. "Maybe it's nothing," she said faintly, though her voice carried unease. But deep down, she knew peace never came without testing. They walked back toward the mansion under the restless wind, unaware that the letter from the past had done more than heal old wounds, it had awakened secrets that still waited in the dark. And somewhere behind them, the same figure watched again, unmoving, the glint of a gold ring catching the faintest light. The letter that gave truth may have also uncovered something buried deeper, and far more dangerous. The night after the figure was seen by the willow, fear hung heavy over the mansion like fog that refused to lift. Michael didn't sleep. He sat in his office, the letter from his late wife open again before him, the handwriting trembling in candlelight. He had reread it so many times that the ink had almost faded in his memory. Down the hall, Clara sat on the edge of her bed, clutching the golden locket close to her heart. The children slept in the next room, their quiet breaths a fragile kind of hope. Yet her instincts would not rest. That shadow by the lake, it wasn't imagination. Someone had been there. Watching. A creak echoed from the hallway outside. Clara froze. Like and subscribe before the tension of this night deepens. She rose carefully, lit her bedside candle, and stepped out. The storm had passed, but the air still smelled of rain and secrets. Footsteps, light ones, padded near the stairs. As she turned the corner, relief replaced her fear. It was Adam, half awake, dragging his blanket. "Miss Clara," he whispered, "Aaron's crying again." Clara knelt, brushing hair from his flushed face. "Did he have another nightmare?" He nodded. "He said Mama was calling him from the garden." The hallway darkened with a cloud passing outside. Clara's chest tightened. "It's just a dream, sweetheart," she said softly, though her voice wavered. "Go back to your room. I'll stay with you." When they reached the nursery, Aaron sat upright in bed, tears glistening. "I saw her," he muttered. "By the window. She said to keep the locket safe." Clara's eyes flickered toward the bedside table where she had set it hours earlier. The locket was gone. Downstairs, Michael heard hurried footsteps. He rose immediately, meeting them at the landing. "What happened?" "The locket," Clara said breathlessly. "It's missing." He didn't hesitate. Together they searched through every room. Drawers opened, rugs lifted, curtains pulled aside. But the house remained hush, shadows deepening with every step. By midnight, exhaustion layered their faces. Clara sank into a chair, trembling. Michael leaned against the fireplace, staring into dying embers. "That figure," she whispered. "It wasn't random. Someone wanted what she left." Michael's jaw stiffened. "No one could have known about it except us." She looked up slowly. "Or someone who once did." For the first time, her eyes mirrored his fear. The idea that someone tied to his past, a partner, a servant, a business rival, could be haunting their walls gnawed at both of them. The very next day, a man arrived unannounced. The butler led him in hesitantly. Tall, thin, dressed in black with sharp features and a voice smooth as silk, Victor Hale, Michael's former financial advisor. "I came to return something," he said, offering a leather briefcase. "Found old company ledgers among my things. They belong to you." Michael studied him suspiciously. "You left without notice years ago. And you married into fortune, which made my presence unnecessary," Victor said coldly. Then, his gaze shifted toward Clara entering the room. "I see the face behind the scandal still graces your home." Clara froze, clutching her apron tighter. Like and subscribe to see the truth unfold in this tense encounter. Michael stepped forward. "You're not welcome to speak of her that way." Victor chuckled lightly. "Protective now, are we? Irony has such a bitter flavor. You never defended her when it counted." The words cut sharp. Clara lowered her eyes, but Michael's face blazed. "Say what you came to say, Victor." He placed the briefcase on the table and smiled faintly. "I came because I've lost something. A small locket, sentimental value only. Gold, engraved. I was told it resurfaced here." Clara's breath caught. "You?" "Yes," Victor interrupted. "I gifted it to your late wife once, as gratitude for her support." Michael's pulse spiked. "Support?" Victor shrugged. "Your empire was expanding. She invested personally when your accounts ran dry. Without her, you'd have drowned before your first merger." Flames reflected in Michael's eyes. "You're lying." "Am I?" Victor stepped closer, smirking. "Then where is that little trinket now?" Clara instinctively reached for her pocket, empty. The conversation faltered as all three realized the same truth: someone else already had it. Victor left soon after, but unease lingered like perfume. Michael shut the door behind him and whispered, "He knows too much." "He saw it," Clara murmured. "The locket's real value isn't gold, it's what's inside." Michael nodded grimly. Then whoever took it won't stop until they find what's hidden within. That night, he bolted windows and checked locks himself. As the world slept, the mansion hummed with paranoia. Hours passed before a faint sound roused him again. Piano keys, one by one, pressed softly through the dark. He crept toward the music room. Inside, under moonlight, the piano lid quivered as if touched by invisible hands. And resting atop its polished surface, the missing locket. Michael's breath caught. "Clara," he called. She rushed in, candlelight cutting the dark. Together they stared as the locket gleamed, open this time. Inside, where once were photographs, now lay a small folded paper. With trembling hands, Clara unfolded it. "Truth buried in silence will haunt generations. The eyes that once plotted beneath you are awake again." Michael frowned. This isn't her handwriting. Then whose is it? Clara asked. He didn't answer. He couldn't. Suddenly, the electricity crackled on, lights flooding the hall. And in that very moment, the foyer phone rang. Its vintage bell echoed like thunder. Michael answered. A pause. Then a distorted male voice. "Should have burned what wasn't yours, Alcott." The line went dead. Shock stiffened him. "He's still here," he whispered. Clara's hand found the edge of the piano for balance. "Victor." But before she could utter another word, a window shattered behind them. The wind blew out the lights again. The locket fell, chain snapping, and rolled beneath the piano. Like and subscribe. The night isn't over, danger has just begun. By dawn, the mansion looked war-torn. A mirror shattered, curtains torn from rods, footprints muddy across the marble floor. The police had come and gone, leaving only confusion. No signs of forced entry, the officer had said, but your alarm was cut manually. Michael sat slumped against the wall, face pale with exhaustion. The boys were with the neighbors for safety. Clara knelt nearby, patching a small cut on his arm. "I won't let this house break them again," she said firmly. He looked at her, something raw flickering behind tired eyes. "You always had more strength than me, Clara." "Not strength," she corrected. "Love. That's what your wife saw too." He managed a fragile smile, but the weight of fear lingered. "We need answers. Victor's not after money, he's after whatever that letter means." "And the message about the eyes?" Clara asked. "He said they were awake again." Michael hesitated, swallowing hard. "Years ago, there was an investor group. Ruthless men. My wife found out they used illegal funding to build my business from the start. She wanted to expose them. That's why the locket mattered, it held their ledger list. The people who could destroy everything I own." Clara froze. "You mean, she was killed because of it?" "Maybe not killed," Michael whispered, eyes darkening. "But silenced." The realization crushed them both in the silence that followed. The wind outside stirred branches against glass, echoing like distant knocks from the dead. Michael turned toward Clara, voice barely above a whisper. "If Victor finds that list, he won't stop at the house. He'll go after anyone tied to it, you included." "Then let him," she said, fire lighting her quiet defiance. "I've lived through shame, through lies. I fear nothing anymore." "You should," he replied. "Because this time, truth kills slower." That night, rain threatened again. Clara tucked the twins safely into bed in the neighbor's cottage and returned alone to the mansion. She carried a small box wrapped in cloth, the locket and the cryptic note sealed together. She planned to burn them, to end whatever ghost tethered their lives. The house groaned as she entered, wood shifting under her steps. The walls felt alive with memory. She walked straight to the fireplace, set the box inside, struck a match, and whispered, "For peace." Flames rose, but before they could swallow the box fully, the window burst inward. A hand, real, strong, desperate, grabbed her wrist from the dark. "Don't," a voice snarled. It was Victor. She pulled away, but he stepped into the flicker of firelight, his face twisted with rage. "Do you know what you're holding? That list is worth millions. It's power. That list cost a woman her life," she said fiercely. "I won't let it destroy her children too." He lunged forward. The two struggled, the cloth tore, the box tumbled. Fire licked across the floor. Michael entered just then, drawn by the noise. "Victor, stop!" he shouted. But Victor turned, eyes burning. "You built your empire on my back, and her blood. Maybe you deserve to drown in smoke." He shoved Clara aside and grabbed the locket from the floor. Before anyone could move, thunder cracked overhead, and the chandelier fell. It shattered between them in a storm of sparks. Glass and fire exploded across the room. When the smoke cleared seconds later, Victor was gone, vanished into the storm through the broken window. The only thing left was the faint glow of melted gold among embers. Michael dropped to his knees beside Clara, pulling her close. Her sleeve was scorched, a thin cut streaked across her cheek, but she was alive. The fire hissed slowly in the rain blowing in through the shattered frame. They sat there, both shaking, breathless, staring at what remained of the locket, twisted and blackened but still faintly shaped like a heart. "It's over," Michael whispered, though his voice lacked conviction. "No," Clara said quietly, her gaze fixed on the broken gold. "Not yet. Not until truth doesn't have to hide anymore." She rose, steady despite the collapse behind them. "You told me once your wife saw something good in you. Maybe now you'll prove her right." Outside, the rain began to wash the ashes away. And somewhere not far from the window, footprints sank slowly into the mud, Victor's final trail, leading toward the road. The locket's secret survived the fire. But the man who took part of it wasn't gone for good. The rain had been falling all morning, soft, patient, almost kind. For the first time in years, the house didn't echo with agony or whispers. The chaos, the fire, the scandals, everything had passed like a long fever. What remained now was healing. Clara Johnson stood at the open window of the study, gazing toward the willow tree by the lake. That place, once witness to secrets, grief, and guilt, now shimmered beneath daylight, calm as forgiveness itself. It had been 5 years since Michael Alcott walked into court with his confession. He never looked for sympathy, only truth. The world took his wealth, his company, his name, but in return, he found something that outlived all of them, peace within his soul. The twins had grown strong under Clara's care. The mansion became something better than its past, a refuge for broken women, a sanctuary for children who once believed the world had left them behind. The sign on the gate still read, "The Helena Grace Foundation." Every dawn, Clara still prayed the same prayer, "Let there be light after damage." Like and subscribe before you see how their story finally ends. That morning, a letter arrived under the door. She recognized the handwriting before even opening it, steady, mature, familiar. It was from the correctional facility 2 counties away. She unfolded it slowly. "My dear Clara. 5 years feel like 1,000 days under one endless sky. I often think of that courtroom, the day truth freed you and chained me. But I never saw my sentence as a punishment, I saw it as a return. Each brick here teaches me what gold blinded me to, that love is the only wealth worth keeping. The boys visited last month. They're growing into men their mother would have adored. They spoke about your devotion, the life you gave them beyond privilege. You gave them character, not luxury, and that's worth eternity. If the world never welcomes me again, I'm content knowing I helped mend what I broke. Yours in peace. Michael A." Tears slipped down her cheeks, quiet and unashamed. There were no wounds left in her heart now, only scars that ached beautifully when it rained. She folded the letter carefully and slipped it into the cedar box beside her desk, the same box that once held the melted remains of the locket. She whispered, "I forgave you long before you asked." Outside, laughter carried down the garden path, the twins, now 17, wrestling clumsily near the rose hedge. They were taller than her now, yet still looked to her first when they needed advice, or comfort, or prayer. "Breakfast's getting cold," she called. "Coming, Miss Clara," they answered in perfect unison, still calling her that, even though she hadn't been a maid in years. Watching them, she felt a warmth that outshone any bitterness that might have remained from her past. Once, she'd served this estate on her knees. Now, she walked its halls as its heart. The house that had ruined her reputation once now lived under her guardianship, and under her faith, it flourished. Inside the dining hall, sunlight poured through the tall windows where glass had been shattered during darker times. On the wall hung a photograph, Helena, smiling beside Clara, holding the twins as toddlers. Below the frame was engraved one line Helena had once written in her journal. "Forgiveness makes the broken places glow. Like and subscribe to honor forgiveness that shines brighter than gold or power." That afternoon, Clara received a phone call from the prison warden. "Miss Johnson," he said carefully, "I thought you should know. Mr. Alcott passed peacefully last night in his sleep. His final words were your name." She didn't answer immediately. Her throat tightened, but she didn't weep. Instead, she whispered, "He finally made it home." When she ended the call, she looked again toward the window. The rain had stopped. A streak of sunlight cut across the path leading to the willow by the lake. For a long moment, she stood motionless, the world holding its breath around her. Then she wrapped a shawl around her shoulders and walked outside. The garden glistened from the storm. Petals bowed under droplets that looked like diamonds. She followed the curve of the path until she reached the tree that had become their symbol of memory, loss, and grace. Beneath its grand arching branches lay a small marble plaque, recently placed, simple but eternal. Michael Alcott, 1973 to 2025. Truth without mercy is fire. Mercy without truth is smoke. She knelt, tracing the letters with trembling fingers. "I kept your promise," she whispered. "The foundation thrives. The boys are everything we prayed they'd become. Maybe you can rest now." The wind stirred softly in answer. Leaves brushed against one another like a sigh of release. She stayed until evening cloaked the lake in gold, thinking not about all she had lost, but about what had been reborn in its place. By twilight, the boys joined her under the tree. Adam carried a candle, Aaron held a folded paper. "Father sent this," Aaron said, handing it to her. Clara opened it carefully. The handwriting was faint now, but legible, dated only a week prior to his passing. "To my sons. I was born of ambition but redeemed by grace. When the world burned my pride, your hearts rebuilt it with goodness. Don't fear the weight of our past. Carry it as wood carries flame, let it give warmth, not destruction. And if you ever forget who you truly are, read this letter under the willow tree, because that's where truth lives free." The boys stood quiet, faces solemn but strong. Clara took each of their hands, placing them together over the plaque. "Promise me you'll remember what your father wrote." "We will," Adam said. Aaron looked at her gently. "Will you be okay now?" She smiled, soft, radiant. "I already am." Like and subscribe for stories where forgiveness heals what time cannot. Night found them inside by the fireplace, sharing warm bread, their laughter mingling with the soft crackle of flames. The house glowed, not grand, not proud, but humble and alive. On the mantel sat the only remaining piece of the locket, now polished and mounted inside a glass heart. Its engraved words, almost worn away, still reflected the light, "Grace keeps what guilt destroys." For the first time, Clara allowed herself to rest, not from exhaustion, but completion. The world beyond the gates would speak endlessly about Michael Alcott, the billionaire who fell from power, the scandal that rattled society, the empire that burned. But within those walls, where truth had first broken both master and servant, another story lived quietly forever, the story of mercy finding its voice through love. Years later, visitors to the foundation would stop under that same willow tree. The caretakers would tell them the legend of the house, of a woman once accused, a man who confessed, and two sons who grew up believing that forgiveness, not revenge, was the highest form of justice. And when the wind passed through the branches at dusk, it carried a sound softer than words, like two voices whispering through eternity. We found peace, together. The lake shimmered beneath that whisper. The mansion stood behind it, no longer an emblem of wealth, but of redemption. And somewhere across that heaven-painted horizon, where truth met mercy at last, love continued, a love unbought, unbroken, and finally free.